Today we're going to look to see if we can replace the O-ring that's under the distributor, because what I'm seeing is I got some oil dripping down under the car pretty good. You can see there, just from a little ride the other day. And so I traced it down. It looks like it's coming off of the distributor bottom, because the top of the motor up here's got some oil on it. I'd already done the valve cover gaskets, so shouldn't be them. But I'm seeing as well these little spots up here on top. So it looks like that the oil is dripping down onto my drive shaft, and then the drive shaft's flicking it up out of the motor and flicking it all over the place, and it's actually getting little drops all over it. So what we're going to do today is change out this O-ring. And so Friendly Neighborhood AutoZone has this kit right here, and it's got the brown O-rings in it, so it should be the good ones that they have. If you look up the individual one, they can order it, but you can just buy that whole little kit. Looks like it's got it all in there. So the first thing we're going to do is establish what our base timing is right now, because the car's running fine, it's just dripping oil. And so I want to make sure that I set my timing back. So I've got my old school timing light over here, and what I'm going to do is check the timing and see where my position is right now. That way when I take the distributor off and take the button and everything and the shaft out, I'll be able to set it back in, being careful to get it as close as I can to where it was before, and then I can adjust my timing back in. So to get your timing set point, everybody knows this. If you don't, here's what you got to do to get your base timing, is to come in here and put your paper clip across the pins in your ALDL connector, and that's gonna make the car not want to adjust its timing. And so then we can get our base timing established. We're gonna check our base timing. See the red dot on there? I got the blue mark on where I need to be, and I got the red mark on where the flywheel is. So all I gotta do is line that back up. Okay, so if you look down in there, you can see I stopped the car and then took a wrench and rotated it around until my little red dot and my little blue line up again. So right up above where you see the barcode on the belt there is what I'm talking about, down in that bottom. Now we know we got it set at where I need to be at when I'm done. And so now I just got to keep the distributor and everything pretty close to the position that they're at right now. Then when I put it back together, keep my ALDL jumped with the paper clip, and then I can set this back to that red dot again. Alright, so for our next step, let's make sure we get our battery loose. You always want to start with the negative. So I've loosened it up, and we're just going to pull the negative post off. You start with the negative in case you touch the wrench to something and it shorts. It won't short because you're on the negative. If you start with the positive with the negative connected and you touch across the positive, then you can get a short. Okay, so we're all set up. We got our little wire numbers on there, and what I did is just started with the number 1 wire, and all I got to remember is it's the one that's closest to this little vacuum line right here. And so then I just go around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the center one is marked as a 0. So next step is to take all these off, but I also put a little mark over here, as you can see, on the side of the distributor, the little green mark. So right here on the side of the distributor, I just put a mark over here on the cooling line that comes up to the intake. And what I can do is reference that and get those lined back up, and that should get me pretty close to my timing for my distributor part. Then all I got to do when I take the distributor cap off is make sure that my button ends up in the same spot on the gearing. And so then I should be really, really close. Then all I got to do is just tweak it a little bit and get my red mark line back up to my blue mark over there. Alright, so the plug wires are off. So next on the list is to take the distributor cap off. So there's 2 little screws, and maybe Phillips heads or maybe little bitty hexes. And so all we're going to do is take these out, one on this side and one over on this side. should be able to take the distributor off. So down below it, if you see, there's an ignition control module. Let's move the camera over. It's got two connectors on it. So next on the list is to disconnect the ignition control module right here with these two little connectors. Camera, there's one right there and one right here. So these two pop off, and then that's going to free up everything so we can get the distributor to come out. Right down there is the bolt. You have to take it loose because it's got the clamp that holds the distributor shaft in. We take that loose, take the little clamp off, and we can slide everything out. Alright, so now that we got the connectors disconnected, and they're up here out of the way, so they're off of the pickup control module. So now we want to mark and make sure we get all this stuff lined up so the hat and everything will line up too. So I have the little green marks over here to verify my distributor's in the right spot. But just to kind of make it easier, I put two little marks down here and right here. So this one lines up with a green dot that's on the engine. And so I can make sure when I set it in, this is pretty close. And then I also mark right here. You can see it's not quite in position because that's my timing difference. And so it sits to the side, but as long as I know that, when I put it back in, I get that in the same spot, and I know I'm good. Because the little green dot, see, it rotates with it, so that's what you got to line back up when you put the gears back in. So as long as we get all these little green lines lining up pretty close, especially this one, make sure it sits right back down where it was, then we should be in pretty good shape. So the next thing to do is to take the bolt loose that holds it on there, and then we'll be able to slide it up. So the bolt that's right down there holding the plate on. We should be able to slide this little fella right out of here. So as far as tools go to get this bolt down here, that's in the bottom, that I got a bolt right down there. They make a tool that you can get to it, but I got one of these little flexi wrenches. Got down there at Harbor Freight for a whole little kit for next to nothing. So you can do it with one of these pretty easy. You just have to get it up on there and you can get it into position. But you don't have a lot to kind of grip on. But you can get it down in there pretty easy. You can see, and I just take a pair of pliers, grab the end of it, and give it a little yank. And it'll break it free, and the nice part is that it ratchets. So see, then I can just ratchet it. You keep your little head kind of straight. So the little ratchet wrenches work pretty good to take that out. Then you don't have to fight too much other than keeping the angle right once you get it loosened up. See, then you can just twist it out of there. So it's a lot easier than having to even deal with that other tool, because there's enough room to get one of these little guys in there. So just a tip on getting that loose. So with everything loose, we got everything marked. Now it's just a matter of picking him up. So it's a pretty good place to pick up. And so what you want to do is pick up as you can feel it rotate as you go. And then there'll be a point where this will be free and see it'll rotate. And so what you have to do is pull it up now, and then the connectors get in the way. So as you pull it up, you got to spin your connectors around a little bit to kind of get them to clear everything. And so we're just going to rotate it out. And just keep trying to clear stuff. It'll come out of there. And so you just move your little wire, and there we go. So we can see that our O-ring must be brittle, because there's oil everywhere on this motor. And what I'll do is clean all this up and see what's going on and make sure I got this O-ring straightened out. Alright, so we got everything out. We're going to put our O-ring on. So here's our little O-ring, came from our kit, and we got Vaseline all over it so it'll slide on there. But if you see, it's got to make it up across here, across that gear, and get all the way up to there. And so it looks like it could take some pretty good damage if we were to try to get it up over that gear and everything. So what I'm going to do is take a water bottle that's got a slick side, and I'm going to use that plastic and make a little wrapper for it, and then I can just slide it over the top of all of that stuff, and hopefully it won't damage it. So we're just going to cut up a water bottle. But what I want to do is make a little wrap around it right there, so I can slip that O-ring up on it. So I don't need much. I only need about that much. Then I'm gonna get me some Vaseline and put it on my outside of my plastic thing. Get it all Vaseline back. And then we're gonna wrap it around this and get it as tight as we can. And get kind of a little taper right at the beginning of it. Let's get it tapered down even further. Make it easy on us. Alright, so now we got it coming up. And so as we pull the O-ring, see, it'll just pop right up over the plastic. And you can see, now with the plastic on it, it just slid right all the way across. Now all I'll do is just pull the plastic off, and I didn't have to work really hard on those gears to get that O-ring to seat down into its little pocket like it's supposed to. So now, we got Vaseline all over it, it's all cleaned up, and we're ready to do the reinstall. Oh, and while I was at it, since it was kind of fuzzy from rust over the 35 years or so, I just took some sandpaper and cleaned up those, knocked the rust off of them so I can make sure that I got a gap in between them. That little gap right there. You don't want to sand too much because you'll mess your gaps up, but you want to have a gap in there as it rotates. If it touches, it's going to ground out. So you just want it to spin by and not touch. So there we go. We're ready to clean up the motor and do the reinstall. Oh, and one thing to be sure to do, since you pulled that out and there was tons of crud, you might want to look down in that hole and make sure there's nothing in there. Because if you can see in mine, a piece of the old wiring harness has fallen down in there, sitting right on top of that gear to the right side. So I gotta get that out of there before I put this all back together, or else it'll get chewed up and go down in the bottom of the engine. So let me just pull that out real quick and I'll show it to you. Yeah, so here's what fell down in there. It was a piece of the old harness. All I did was take a screwdriver and put a little Vaseline on the end of it, and I was able to stick my screwdriver down in there and pull it back out. But it fell down in the hole when I pulled it out because of the car's age. Stuff like that falls out, falls down in places they don't need to be. So with the Vaseline on the end of the screwdriver, it comes off there pretty easy. The Vaseline sticks to it. Okay, we're ready for our reinstall. We got our new O-ring on. We got everything, so now all we got to do is get it in there so we line everything up. But because we got the new O-ring on, when we set it in there, the old O-ring had given way, and so when you put it down in there, it actually went metal to metal on the surfaces, and so you could see exactly where the position ends up. But having the new O-ring, it's not going to drop down in there all the way, and as you can see, as it drops, if I get it close to position, now my little green thing is way off, so I got to move this back over here. And then if I line up the green marks on the plate down here to the one I put on the motor, I'm something like that. So I need to be over here with the green mark. So we got to get it somewhere around in there and get it to drop down. And then we line up our plates, but you can see it's behind it. But it hasn't gone all the way down in because the O-ring now is big enough that it's preventing it from going all the way down. But you can see the further you go up, the further it goes back. The further you go down, the further it goes clockwise. So what we need to be is behind the position we want to end up, because when we drop it all the way down, it's going to pull it on around into position. So this would be with the O-ring not fully engaged yet. It's going to sit here. As soon as I push the whole thing down, this little green guy is going to move forward and it's going to end up in its position. So that's with my green line on the plate lining up to the motor. As soon as I push everything down, this one's going to rotate just a little further and it's going to get back into position. So now all I want to do is try to get my O-ring to go down, which may not be possible until I put the clamp on. But I'll put the clamp on and then we'll slowly bring it down with the clamp and see if that doesn't pull that back in line. So now we just need our little crooked wrench. And what we're going to do is just start putting a little tension on it and get that to seat. And then we should see, as we drop in, that little green dot right there is going to move forward. So I'm going to put a little tension on it with the clamp and slowly get that to engage. And it should slowly walk itself forward as I push that O-ring down and get that O-ring to hop into its position. So this is where you got to kind of be careful. You can't really thump on it. You can kind of press on it a little bit. Kind of help that O-ring to get in there. Maybe wiggle on it a little bit. But you'll feel it when it starts going in there. So we just wiggle on it ever so gingerly. Just push down just a little. And we'll know when we hit bottom. You see it got a lot easier there, so the O-ring must have made it over. But if you're watching the video, you can see that as it goes down, that little green one has moved to this side. So that's right where we began at the start. And so what we're going to have to do is get him fully seated and then back this bolt up a little bit so we can do our adjustment. But this won't move now because I got the bolt down, so I'll just flip the wrench over, loosen the bolt up a little bit, and then it should rotate. So now it's back to rotating again. And the O-ring is tight now, so it's not going to be near as easy to rotate as it was in the past when I was doing the adjustments. But with the bolt loose, see, it goes back. So now all we got to do is put it back in its approximate position. So I'm going to line up the lines on the plate best I can get it. This is back in position to where it was originally, so we should be in good shape right there. So we'll leave that bolt loose, hook everything back up, fire it back up, and check and make sure our timing is still good. All right, so our distributor's back on, everything's put back together. This is still loose, so we can do some minor adjustment, but you can see my little green dots lined up pretty close to where they were, and the dots on the plate down there initially helped me to make sure that I had it in position before I put the cap back on. So we'll fire this back up and verify that we still got our red dot and our blue line over on the timing. Make sure that's set the same, and we should be right back to where we began. Only now we won't have a leaky O-ring. So we'll fire it up here in just a minute and see what it does. Alright, so last on the list, so we got our everything set up. All we're going to do is come back and shoot timing light. See right on the left side of the screen there. See the red dot. Line it back up with the blue line. There we go. All we got to do now is just tighten the wrench back down. We'll have our timing. So it's pretty simple. You just got to be very careful to make sure you mark everything. And if you get it all marked up, you should be able to take it apart and put it right back together. Well, thanks for watching.